Of New York's 8 million people, 500,000 are Puerto Ricans. During the 1940s and 50s, we streamed into places like Spanish Harlem in New York at the rate of over 50,000 a year, until there were 1 million of us here on the mainland, as we call the United States. To understand why so many fled, and why now so many are returning home again, you must learn something of Puerto Rico, our beautiful island in the Caribbean. One of the finest islands I ever saw. All that man could ever want is here. An English sailor wrote these words 200 years ago, and we must agree with him that our island does possess great beauty, that its soil is rich and fertile, nourished by the tropical climate and frequent showers that drench the mountain rainforests and drain into the valleys. But unfortunately, beauty alone is not enough. There are few mineral resources here, and because of the rainforests and mountains, only half the island can be used for agriculture. Even if we could hack away the jungles and level the mountains, we still could not produce enough food to feed our population of 2.5 million. Imagine if most of the people in the world one day moved to the United States. This will give you an approximate idea of how densely populated Puerto Rico is, of the problems created when 2.5 million people must live crowded on an island only 100 miles long and 35 miles wide. Puerto Rico, lying 1,000 miles from the mainland, is part of the Greater Antilles, along with Hispaniola, Cuba, and Jamaica. This chain of islands encircles the warm Caribbean. The islands are the crests of ancient mountain ranges that descend over 5 miles to the bottom of the sea. Puerto Rico, which means rich port, was discovered by Christopher Columbus, who claimed it for Spain in 1493. Much of the feeling of old Spain remains, of a long-lived colonial empire whose wealth came not from gold and silver, but from the vast fields of sugarcane. Sugar became the island's very life, and the plantation owners, who formed a kind of ruling aristocracy, prospered. Puerto Rico developed into a Spanish Gibraltar in the Caribbean. The guns of the fortress El Morro protected the colony from English and French buccaneers until the Spanish-American War in 1898, when the United States fleet landed troops and Spain was at last forced to give up her 400-year hold on the island. Today, Puerto Rico no longer depends almost completely on sugar for its economic life, but it is still of immense importance to the economy. To many of the people, sugar is still their life. It is their past, the history of their existence for more than 200 years. The government has attempted to distribute land to small farmers to break up the large holdings of the great sugar companies. But seldom can a farmer with only a few acres afford the machinery and chemicals needed to produce cane efficiently and profitably. The old ways persist. and for many, it is a marginal existence. The larger, mechanized, company-owned plantations produce more efficiently. In a year to 18 months, the stalks will have grown tall and thick. Then the fields are burned to eliminate the foliage, and cane fires rage through the night. The moist, naked cane remains standing, ready for harvest. If he can bear the heat and dirt and insects and works hard, a man may earn up to $1,800 during the 6 months of the season, from December to June. The fathers of these men earn little more than $200 in a year. So it would seem we are making some progress. But we must make much more. We must produce sugar more efficiently if we are to raise the living standard of the cane workers. But the problems are many and solutions difficult. In the cane fields, for example, a man is ordinarily employed only 6 months. The rest of the year is the dead time. A man and his family must then find other work or stretch what money they have and hope that some miracle will lift their burden of poverty. Armando Rojas, his friend Tomas Ortega, and his family form the human element of the problem of poverty that was almost traditional in Puerto Rican life until perhaps only 20 years ago. Centuries of colonial rule had prepared the average rural Puerto Rican to do little more than cut sugarcane or pick coffee beans. There was not enough agricultural work to go around. And in the cities, practically no industry. Therefore, very few jobs to be had. Slums, which still exist, are grim reminders of the depths we had reached in the mid-1930s. Where there is no work, there is poverty, disease, living conditions so bad you would not believe they could exist. Puerto Rico, a possession of the United States, an island lying in the very shadow of the mainland, was known as the poorhouse of the Caribbean. There was widespread malaria, hookworm, hunger, and dying of it. Over half of the children did not go to school. 1 out of 3 could not read or write. The United States government tried to help. They built health centers and schools, but they could not solve the basic economic problems, the causes of the misery that existed then. And slums like El Fanguito, the little mud hole, swelled. If you had visited Puerto Rico 20 years ago, you would have said, "Ah, those poor people. What hope is there for them? No wonder so many are going to the mainland." If you visit Puerto Rico today, you may still see slums reaching out from San Juan into the sea. Or they may have already vanished. For there are changes taking place today that only a short time ago no one believed possible. We are tearing down the walls of this Caribbean poorhouse and lifting ourselves by our own bootstraps. Puerto Rico's first elected governor, Luis Muñoz Marin, a man of uncommon vision and honesty, perhaps of greatness, was our leader on the long road out of the depths of despair. First, Muñoz and his aides developed what is now called Operation Bootstrap, a plan which would attack the fundamental problem, unemployment, a plan by which jobs could be created. This is how it worked. The government would build a factory, whole blocks of fresh, modern factories, and then, by every possible means, tried to persuade established private companies to buy or rent the factories from us and operate them. But it was essential that these companies have already existing markets outside Puerto Rico, for they could expect to sell little here. We told American manufacturers about the palm trees and trade winds, offered them freedom from taxes for up to 17 years, offered them every incentive we could think of, including a large labor force ready and able to work. It took time, money, hard work, and good leadership. But as a result, nearly 1,000 American companies have established plants in Puerto Rico since 1950, providing tens of thousands of jobs and transforming this poorhouse into the most industrious and prosperous island of the Caribbean. Juan Cardona is perhaps typical of the new generation of intelligent, educated Puerto Ricans. A few years ago, there would have been little future for him here. Small opportunity to learn a trade, and perhaps none to practice it. He might well have considered going to the States, along with thousands of others who left each year during the 1950s. But it is different today. For now there is opportunity to learn and to work, and young men like Juan Cardona see a future on their island. The Cardona home is a good example of progress being made in improving the living conditions of the people. New housing developments are going up all over the island. Construction of new resort hotels, sponsored originally by the government, has developed tourism into an important industry. Today, over 500,000 people a year visit Puerto Rico, spending vast amounts for the privilege of doing nothing under the tropical sun. And more discover the delights of this island each year. In the rural areas, we are providing schools where there were none before. They are simple, but will be improved in time.
En ese cuento decía que había un rey que cuando las cosechas de los vasallos estaban...
El conde Lucas. Muy bien, ¿dónde vivía el conde Lucas?
En caserío, ha muerto en explosión fábrica.
¿De qué se trata? Léelo más duro.
Te diré.
Many more agregados, or farmers, now own their own homes and land. They buy their farm from the government for $200 an acre and pay for it over a period of 40 years. In agriculture, we are diversifying, no longer so completely dependent upon cane. There's a greater variety of crops, vegetables and fruit. Pineapples, for example, are raised in increasing quantity with modern harvesting methods. Visitors, representatives of underdeveloped countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, come to study Operation Bootstrap firsthand, to see how a program such as ours might be possible in their countries. For Puerto Rico has become a showcase, a model of what can be done in an impoverished land. We are happy to display our accomplishments, but there is still so much to do. Muñoz Marin, during his long years as governor, said this many times in describing the ultimate purpose of Puerto Rico.
We certainly are proud of what we have done, but we are not satisfied. There is much yet to do, economically, socially, educationally, politically. This is one of our chief tenets, that the economy is the servant of the spirit, and not the spirit the servant of the economy. That's what I've called Operation Serenity. We feel that as the economy reaches certain levels, a greater amount of the wealth, not only of the income of the government, but of the income of the economy as a whole, of the people as a whole, should be diverted to higher uses, to better education, to the arts, to scientific institutions, to museums, to the spiritual goods that mankind must have.
We owe much to this man, Muñoz Marin, and in time we hope to accomplish what he envisions for us as a people, as Americans. In cities like San Juan, the capital, you see the influence of the United States everywhere. And why not? For we are citizens of the United States in almost every way. We celebrate the 4th of July. We serve in the American Armed Forces. We don't, however, vote for the President of the United States or pay a federal income tax. In 1917, we were made citizens of the United States. In 1952, we became a self-governing Commonwealth, voluntarily associated with the United States. Now, this is a very unusual relationship between two countries. Puerto Rico is not a colonial dependency, nor is it a state, but it is part of the United States with an autonomous government. Whether this island should be independent, continue as a Commonwealth, or possibly become the 51st state, are questions now under official study and must be answered in time. Though Puerto Rico, to be sure, is a bit of America in the Caribbean, we still value our Spanish heritage. About 80% are nominally Catholic. This is part of our Spanish inheritance, along with the Spanish language which we speak. Another part is the racial composition of the people. Some are white, of pure Spanish descent or from the mainland. Some are Negro. Some are a mixture of Caucasian, Negro, and perhaps Indian blood too. The Spanish brought Negroes from Africa to work in the cane, and over the years they intermarried, producing great variety in the color and appearance of the people. Seldom is there evidence of prejudice imposed because of color. We Puerto Ricanos get along very well with one another. We work well together. We're making progress here, where so many underdeveloped lands of the Americas and elsewhere are still struggling to find a way. Honest labor, honest leadership, help from the mainland are a few of the reasons for our success. You could offer many more. What has been done here in Puerto Rico goes well beyond this island, for our experiment has demonstrated to the world that a people can indeed lift themselves up by their own bootstraps.